I'm going to go ahead and go into the presentation. So, and just review a little bit of what we did in the last call. But then the idea that, uh, again, what I want to talk about is, with this series, I'm really appreciating all the people who put their hand up at the end of the last series and said, "Hey, this is good, but we're entering temptation season, and can we have some additional support?" Because I think what Becky mentioned in that comment there is that, anything that gets us out of balance, whether it's an overindulgence or an overindulgence in the to-do list, right? So, which is so easy at this time of year, then that pushes us into the chi deficiency, and which is going to create the imbalance, which leads to the lack of control and lack of impulse control and so on. All right, so let me go into the share screen thing here and see if I can find the right window to share. I think I've got it. There we go. All right, so I'll go just to my thing there, and let me put the presentation into presentation mode. Okay. Hey, hold on. So, all right. So again, I keep advancing it unintentionally there. Again, our topic is continuing the idea of purpose first, and again, so much of my perspective, which is really deepened with, since since Sarah and I developed Accunect, and I've been teaching it for the last handful of years, is really moving away from the labels and the diagnoses and the trying to fix symptoms, and moving into being stronger, being healthier, optimizing instead of fighting infection. Let's boost the immune system, and then let it do its job, right? So again, that's the title. Purpose first is, being able to do what we think we're here to do, or what we want to do, or something that we think is a useful purpose for our energy and for our life, and to not get distracted by minor addictions and distractions, whether or not that's sweets, alcohol, or the internet, or whatever. So, and then I've retitled this series "Overcoming Temptation for the Holidays," but it's still the idea, right? So now the thing that we talked about in the first call of this series, just to review. And in that call, I kind of reviewed the whole first series, the one that started in October. But the idea of really, in the last call, I was coming up with a strategy for cheating smarter. Not to I hope I didn't over encourage cheating, but the idea that to be realistic, we're going to have more temptation of foods and beverages that aren't really good for us, or could trigger our craving mechanisms and so on, or our distraction mechanisms and so on during this time of year. So, but being realistic, we're not going to avoid that. So coming up with the cheating smarter. So I went through just and referenced briefly some of the science behind how the frequency of carbohydrate consumption has an effect on insulin regulation. And basically, the more frequent during the day that you have carbohydrates, basically the more reactive your insulin metabolism is. And the more spikes you have in the insulin, the more the roller coaster of blood sugar and the roller coaster of the dopamine, which is that reward chemical, and more cravings, right? So, and then also understanding the effect of the duration of carbohydrate consumption on insulin. So the idea is that as soon as you start to eat, your body releases some insulin, but if you're still eating like an hour and a half later, it'll release more like automatically. And so then you can get into that roller coaster thing again, just by stretching out the eating period. And so the summary of that, again, you can replay that lecture, it's up on the website, is, the way to cheat smarter and to not totally say no to temptations or to social pressures, is another thing, is to really try to limit carbs during the day. Like at breakfast and lunch, where you're less likely to be in an environment with social pressure, have a good solid breakfast without much carbs and so on, and try to avoid that for lunch as well. So if you are in a situation where there's more pressure, as in social pressure or temptation in the evening, then at least you haven't been snacking on the carbs all day long, and then that would really limit that. And then with that, try to really not snack before dinner. And if you do have a glass of wine or a champagne at the company party or something like that, try to have it with the meal and not beforehand, because the more the consumption is stretched out, the more of a swing that you're going to get in the blood sugar. So that was the summary of that call, and I just wanted to review that because to some extent that's going to go into the idea of this call, right? So, but the real thing I want to talk about as a trigger for for addictive behaviors, or whether or not that's again the food or the substance or the internet or whatever, is depression. And depression is really common at the holidays. So, and there's a few contributing factors. One is being in a low dopamine state, and that's that reward chemical. We get pleasure with dopamine, and that's why it's a reward chemical. And the other thing that's related to the blood sugar is serotonin. And a lot of antidepressants work by trying to get your body to hold on to more serotonin and not take it out of circulation as fast, to try to make up for people who have low serotonin, right? So, but that's basically the happiness chemical. It's like a mood chemical. And they're both really affected by blood sugar levels and insulin levels, which is tracking that. And so they follow the roller coaster. We get a boost in both of them with eating a dose of sugar or a dose of sweet of some sort or whatever, or when we get a little adrenaline rush by engaging in something novel, like surfing the internet or playing a game on the phone and such like that or whatever. So but those things follow the roller coaster then. Now, the other thing that triggers depression for a lot of people is less sunlight. And this is particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. Those of you down under, at the holiday season, it's summer for you, so your days are longer. And that isn't a factor for people in the Southern Hemisphere. But for those of us who live up north here, and especially, now that I'm living in England, I mean, the sun sets before 4 o'clock this time of year. It's very easy to just miss the sun totally for the whole day because you're indoors during the few hours that it's actually out and so on. But the sunlight actually triggers chemical changes within our bloodstream and also leads to that low serotonin and low dopamine situation, which again, those are the chemicals that when they're low, we have the cravings. Okay, so then the last thing I have on this list is a more of a psychological thing, and it's perfectionism. So, and I want to delve into that a little bit in this talk tonight. So, because we, I think I mentioned in my blog post for, announcing this series, or my letter, anyways, my email, the idea that we always want to have these picture perfect holidays, and especially around Christmas, and to have the perfect gifts selected and the perfect tree and the perfect Christmas dinner and the perfect everything, right? So it's just lots of planning to try to make things perfect, and planning affects the liver, which we're going to get to here. So but let me just quickly tie that back to the idea of energy work, right? Both the low dopamine and low serotonin levels, which are associated with depression, lack of focus, lack of energy, and so on, that's really chi deficiency. So anything that pushes us into chi deficiency, like Becky's comment about overextending it, and then having that weakening of the kidney chi and stimulus to the adrenals, then pushing her into the cravings and so on. That's actually how it works. So, but the liver also plays a huge role in blood sugar metabolism. The kidneys and the kidney meridian, which includes the adrenals, plays a huge role in blood sugar metabolism and insulin metabolism. And of course, the pancreas, which is ruled by the spleen meridian. So those three meridians, the liver, the spleen pancreas meridian, and the kidney meridian, which rules the adrenals, all have a big effect on our qi levels, because the kidneys store the qi, the spleen is responsible for extracting the qi from the food, and the liver is responsible for circulating the qi. And then they all work together with the blood sugar metabolism. So anytime we balance those meridians, that can help to boost our qi and to hence regulate dopamine and serotonin metabolism. And, I'm mentioning that because, I kind of cover like a little bit of a different topic to kind of educate a little bit before each balancing. But then sometimes there's themes that revisit in the balancings. Well, that's because we need a rebalancing of those meridians. We've had stress in those basic meridians that affect us. So, all right. So again, here's one of the reasons for having this maintenance series. I hope it's more than just maintenance, but the support series through the holidays, is that having healthy habits can help to keep our chi strong and limit those swings in the depression and addictive chemistry. Because when we get depressed, that's when we want that sugar high, or that alcohol high, or some rush from the video game or whatever. So limiting sugars and flour products and alcohol as much as possible. And again, cheat smarter if you're going to have them. Try to have them just once a day, to keep up your chi reserves. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, not overextending yourself. And trying to get at least some exercise in so that you're keeping your chi moving. Because stagnation is a cause of depression as well. And sometimes, sometimes we get busy with the holidays, but we're not necessarily exercising. A lot of people shop online. And so you're doing your Christmas shopping, but instead of walking around some mall somewhere, you're on Amazon, or some other, shopping website or whatever. And you're actually sitting and stagnating while you're doing shopping. And sometimes that's convenient, but it's also, it's in the modern day where we have shopping becoming more and more a sedentary exercise, out of time pressure. So, and I wanted to mention this idea of again, depression and qi, that there's a pattern of energy imbalance in Chinese medicine related to the liver meridian called stagnant liver qi, or stagnation of liver qi. It's a very common pattern. It affects many people to a degree, maybe even most people to a degree, right? So another common translation of that pattern is depression of liver qi. And I like mentioning that. And actually, it's less used. So I usually refer to stagnant liver qi when I'm teaching or talking about it with, with students or clients or whatever. But I really like the label depression of liver qi, because the liver's job is to keep things moving and flowing in our lives and in our body. And when we feel stuck, where we don't feel like we're making progress, that's when we feel psychologically depressed. And so the idea of stuckness or stagnation equating to depression, makes a lot of sense. The other thing that goes along with that stagnation, which I don't really have this on the slide here, but it ties back into, what I was talking about with the sugar metabolism, is that in Chinese medicine, if there's stagnation, there's pain. If there's pain, there is stagnation. So anytime we get stagnant and our chi isn't moving, we will actually start to have some kind of pain in the body. And we might identify it more as a psychological pain. We feel frustrated or depressed or whatever. But sugar is a painkiller. I think I mentioned that in the previous call. It's actually, has similar mechanisms in the brain to opiates. And so it is a short-term painkiller. So when we feel depressed and we're stagnant, we literally have stagnant chi in the body, then not only do we feel mentally stuck, we have a certain sense of pain, and that directly makes us reach for something sweet, because sweet counteracts pain in the short run. Unfortunately, it's not an effective painkiller, because then it creates inflammation and fluid retention, which causes more stagnation, and you get on the vicious circle of the sugar creating even actually more stagnation and more pain and making the craving for more sweet and more sugar and just going around in a circle there. So again, that's the idea of trying to stay in balance and stay strong with our chi, because it's not enough chi or stuck chi that makes us have cravings. Here's some big stressors for the liver at the holidays is planning. And so whether or not it's making lists of gifts that you have to buy, parties you have to go to, parties you have to organize, family get-togethers, decorating the house, buying the decorations, buying all the ingredients, all of these things. There's like a whole extra load of planning that happens at the holidays, and the liver's in charge of planning. So just the extra planning is a stress. And then if on top of that we want to do everything perfect, because Christmas only comes once a year, right? So, then that perfectionism gets in the way of just planning good enough, right? So, um, trying to do everything, trying to make everybody else's Christmas good, right? Making Christmas good for your friends and your family and not taking care of yourself and not saying no. I mentioned we had the healing intensive in Limerick yesterday. There's often a theme to those healing intensives. They're really magical. But the idea of having this self-worth to put your own needs first was a huge theme for all of the sessions in the healing intensive. And, I'm bringing that up here because it's not an uncommon theme for those healing intensives, because I do a fair number of them. But this one was at the start of December. And so we're like entering the holiday season, and the whole idea of, oh gosh, am I going to be able to set my boundaries, I think was up for a lot of people. And then the other thing is lack of exercise. A lot of times when we get busy, going for a walk or going to the gym or whatever, when the busier we get, for a lot of us, that's the first thing to fall out of the schedule, and that creates stagnation. Right? So, all right. And then, hey, a word about the perfectionism. Here's a phrase: is that perfect is the enemy of good. And the idea is that that's a common belief or habit that gets in the way of doing decent planning, is the idea of trying to plan something to the nth degree and make it perfect. So and for some reason, we all want to have a perfect Christmas, and we have all these picture postcard images in the shopping malls and on the TV and so on. And so the perfectionism seems to be rampant with a lot of people. Even though I think a lot of us can agree, it's really the social connection that matters, not having all of the perfect things, or even the perfect ingredients for the perfect meal and all that kind of stuff. It's really the getting together and making a connection that matters. But sometimes we get distracted by our need for perfectionism, or a lot of people do. So, so being able to stay in hey, let's have the holidays good enough and not try to make them perfect and not overachieve, because it's hard enough to not overextend yourself at the holidays and then go into chi deficiency without having this perfectionism cropping up and pushing us into overachieving. All right. Hey, so with that, um, here's kind of the summary. It's a short lecture here, but to stack the odds for making it through the holiday season better, anything we can do again to support the liver, which helps us to make better choices about planning and helps to keep the chi moving in our body, and it helps to regulate the blood sugar, regulating the spleen and pancreas, which again, big role in the spleen and blood sugar regulation, and hence in that dopamine, serotonin regulation and our craving regulation, and the kidneys to support keeping our chi reserves up, right? So getting Acuconnect is a great way to keep that in balance. We'll be doing that in a minute. But eating good breakfast, I mean, this is, to me, it's a time of year to really, be having, protein and vegetables for breakfast, and not pastries and donuts and sugar and fruit juice and smoothies and so on, because those things are just too sweet, right? So try to make exercise a priority, even if it's just going for a walk and so on, and get to bed on time and get your rest. So, and get good rest and not try to burn the midnight oil. So, all right. Hey, so with that, I'm gonna have a sip of tea and we'll go into the Acunex balancing. I'll be using the Acunex Health Map, of course, and I'll be using self muscle checking to tap into my intuition to find things to balance. And whatever's coming up for me, as well as any insights or intuitions that are coming up for me, I'll talk about that. And then when I feel like I'm ready, I'll tap. I'll try to remember to tell you I'm starting to tap for those of you who like to tap yourself, or for those of you who are listening to the replay and want to tap yourself during the replay and so on to participate fully with it. So although I do think the tapping on yourself is optional, I just, I'll give you that clue of when to tap. If you tap yourself, just tap over the head a little bit. You don't have to tap on the head, just off a little bit to stimulate the brain and nervous system, and tap over the heart to stimulate the heart energy center and all of the acupuncture meridians. All right. So with that, let me come back to the view of me here. So, oh, interesting. Becky said just listing all the stressors is stressful. So, you know what? I think raising it to awareness is sort of a necessary evil there a little bit. But really, the idea that it's not just the sweets that are our problem at the holidays. It's the to-do list, and it's the overachieving and the over perfectionism. So, the more we can attack, the more angles we can attack it from, and the more we can stay in balance, and the more we can keep all of our meridians resilient, the better. And that's why I like to try to mention all of those things. So, any other questions on anything I said before we start the balancing? I'll just give people a moment to type into the chat window if they want to. All right, well then I'll just get going. I've got a health map in front of me here, so I'll give myself a moment to just come out of lecture mode and just shift my focus to Acunex mode. Hmm. Okay. I love Henry's comment about I think it's important to remember at the holidays we have to give to ourselves and not just to others. That's it exactly. Um, I have to say I've been for the last couple of weeks, just with everything going on, I've been struggling to be able to make time to have a lie-in on the weekend, to have a sleep in a little bit and get a little extra rest or whatever, just because of managing, even family pressure. Oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, and so on. That's a reality of what we have to negotiate with, is within our families, within our social groups, is to make time for ourselves and to give to ourselves. So, yeah. All right. I am getting led into the health map now. So, I'm starting with oneness. Um, and I'm getting led into the nervous system, but really what I call the thought integration system, which is the interface between the meridians and the nervous system. And it's kind of like the interface between the subconscious and conscious mind. Um, and I'm getting the ethmoid bone, which plays a role in receiving information from collective consciousness. And I'm getting the liver and the liver meridian, and um, the word the word that's coming up is planning, which is a natural function of the liver. But then the image that I got was like this whole idea of perfectionism, which is a liver imbalance, right? That's a classic liver meridian imbalance, is to need plans and organizational things to be perfect rather than good enough, right? So, um, and you know what? I just got this image. At least in Western countries, the Christmas is the central holiday of the holiday season. And although there's other holidays, but this idea of Christmas tends to dominate the holiday season. And I just got this image that in Christian theology, one of the messages of Jesus was to get over perfectionism. I mean, it's a different way of looking at it, but the idea of actually just having faith is what you need to do, not follow a bunch of rules perfectly, right? So it was really, and I'm paraphrasing into my own version of theology here, but the message was that it isn't perfect following of rules that makes you acceptable to the universe or to God. It's the having that connection, having that faith of being connected to God is what's important. And from my perspective, that's really one of the central messages of Jesus in Christian theology. And so I just think it's interesting that that was the image that I got when I got to oneness, and it really fits the perfectionism. And to remember um, that perfectionism is definitely not supposed to be part of Christmas. It's become part of um, an advertising holiday, I think, actually, right? So, all right, yeah, that's the image I get. So we're changing the imagery that's coming in, balancing the liver to get over this perfectionism, tapping into oneness, and that idea that it's oneness and connection that matters, not the material perfection or the planning perfection, and and seeing different ways to be in this holiday season with the ethmoid bone. All right, so that's what I'm tapping. I'm going to start tapping now. If any of you like to tap on yourself, you can begin. Okay, I think that's finished. Yes. So I've stopped tapping. You can stop tapping yourself if you were tapping. Um, all right, I'm going to see what's next. Okay. Um, I've got the next balancing. It's a few different pieces. It came up fairly quickly. The first one is the defense balancing, which, it helps to balance the immune system, but um, but the but the other thing it does is it balances the liver and the spleen pancreas meridian. So, it does have a uh, an effect on that insulin metabolism and so on. And then I'm getting the pericardium and the triple heater meridian, and both of those govern our boundaries with the world, right? The pericardium is more intimate boundaries and intimate relationships, and then the triple heater is more social relationships. And then I got another piece, which was the gallbladder and courage, and the image of the courage to say no. And so I think, this image of being um, being able to put our needs as important to give to ourselves, and then to gracefully manage our boundaries with others, and to say no, but to say no in a graceful way, when we need to say no, and to not overextend ourselves. And I think support for all of that, as well as then support for um, the actual blood sugar regulation and everything. So, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start tapping all of that: the defense, pericardium, triple heater, and the gallbladder. So if you want to tap yourself, now's a good time. Okay. I've stopped tapping, but I feel like I don't want to release my hands and just stay connected to this for a moment. Hmm. Okay. Now I've stopped tapping, so you can stop tapping um, if you were tapping. I'm getting something else. Okay. Okay. I've got something. It's quite simple, but um, I've got Mars. The archetype of Mars is the first thing, and then the next thing I got was the Wei Qi. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Wei Qi is the concept in Chinese medicine of like a surface energy field that protects us from the external world. And it also gives us awareness as well. Um, but one of the things that, and here's the image that came to me, is one of the things it gives us a barrier to is feeling other people's emotions. And people with weak Wei Qi actually, if somebody's emotionally upset around them, they not only notice by looking at their facial expression and going, "Oh, are you upset?" Right? So they actually feel the other person's emotion inside their body because they don't have a barrier to stop the emotion from penetrating in. And of course, once it's in, now it's your emotion and you have to process it and deal with it just like you generated the emotion. So it puts quite a load on the body. It makes you chi deficient just to have weak Wei Qi. But then you've got a lot of extra emotional processing and so on, which is stressful on your liver amongst other organs and so on. Um, but the other thing that is a psychological effect of that is that, what, anytime we do assert our own needs and say, "Oh gosh, I'd love to, but I just can't. I'm totally busy. I can't see a time that I can squeeze it in. I just won't be able to make it. I'm sorry, or I'm already booked that time," and so on. Anytime we do say no, right? Even if we say it gently, gracefully, whatever, the other person is naturally going to have some disappointment. If you feel their disappointment in your body, it makes it really hard to say no, because the consequences of saying no are not just hearing, "Oh, that's too bad," right? So you actually feel their disappointment, and that's quite a stress. So Mars is strength. I can do this. Mars is, my needs are important. Mars gives us an interest in survival and taking care of ourselves. So bringing Mars, which is strength, into the Wei Qi to make it stronger is what this balancing is about, so that we can maintain our boundaries at this time of year. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and tap that Mars to the Wei Qi. Okay. I've finished tapping. That's good. Hmm. It's interesting. I normally think of my Wei Qi as being fairly good, although it was weak when I had my cold, right? But I actually felt myself get taller with that balancing. It was like it felt like my whole body kind of expanded and lengthened and so on. That was quite interesting. All right. There is something else that we're going to do. Got the pancreas, and I'm getting a belief coming up. Hmm. Um, this is a common one. People will like me if I am nice. Um, hmm. That's a belief that makes it hard to say no. And the emotion that's coming up, the emotion that's natural to the pancreas is the emotion that's natural to the spleen meridian because the spleen rules the pancreas, and that's worry. And so the emotion of worry is actually coming up here. But if you're worried about what other people think, then you're not worrying about yourself, right? So, and um, yeah, and that can lead to a distortion of being able to give to yourself and not just to others. It's not about choosing one or the other. It's about the balance, right? So, okay. Mm, okay. Um, that's what I'm getting. So the pancreas, clearing the belief people will like me if I'm nice, and then balancing the emotion of worry so that the amount of worry that we worry about ourselves with how much we worry about our family and friends and so on, that's a better balance in that relationship of worry there. So I'm tapping that, balancing now. Okay, I've stopped tapping. That's finished. That's what I'm getting for the balancing. So I did have a thought that come in, which I'll share. Henry typed a comment, which I'll read out for those of you who can't see the chat window. And any other questions or thoughts, I'll stay online to process those. So at first, I like Henry's comment. I think why Christmas is so dominant in the psyche of the planet is that it's the only time of year where globally everyone, regardless of wealth or status, has a belief in the goodwill between people across the board. Um, and I really like that. I think that's a beautiful way to think about it. And what's important, it is about, to me, it's like that, it's that making a connection and thinking of somebody. Um, that's goodwill. Um, Regardless of what your resources are, we can all do that. And um, but even that can be in balance. And I haven't thought of this for a really long time, but um, I think it seems to me related a little bit to Henry's comment in an abstract way. It was while I was tapping one of the balancings, and it didn't seem important to say it at the time, but I had this recollection of when I was a teenager, and I used to babysit for the family next door, and we were really close friends with them, and so we would celebrate Christmas with them. I mean, we had our own Christmas, but we would go over and open presents with them as well. And I didn't have any money. I babysat, but this is a long time ago. I got a penny a minute for my babysitting. It didn't rack up a whole lot of dollars there, right? So, and I wanted to buy the little 3-year-old girl a gift, but I didn't have a lot of money. And so I really thought about, I was still young enough to put myself in the eyes of a 3-year-old, and I just bought her a little ball, right? Spent $1 on it or $2 on it or something like that. Put it in a box, wrapped the box, and then I took that wrapped box and put it in another larger box, and then wrapped that one and put that in a larger box and wrapped that one and put that in a larger box and wrapped that one. So, I only gave her one present, but I wrapped it 4 or 5 times. And but for a 3-year-old, it's just tearing the paper off is the exciting thing. They're not keeping score at the end of it. It's the experience of tearing the paper off. And so I gave the cheapest present, but I wrapped it 5 times and I put extra love into it, right? So the parents and other relatives bought all these really expensive toys that were not obvious to a 3-year-old how to play with. So ripped the paper off of those, went, opened up my present 5 times, found a ball, which she understood, and ran off and played with the ball and left all the expensive toys in the sitting room. And everybody was a little bit upset with me for winning. And it's like, no, I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to give her what she wanted, right? So, but that's the thing. It's like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have. You can give love, and that's what we should be doing. So, all right. Hey, any other questions, thoughts, reactions to anything in the balancing or anything I said? Becky says thank you. Thank you, Becky, and thank you to everyone. I really appreciate being able to do these calls. It's one of the gifts of doing AccuNect that for me, the idea that there's a separation between the person doing the balancing and the person receiving the balancing, it just doesn't make any sense. We're going on a healing journey together, and I'm getting so much out of these myself. It's nice to have a group of people to be going on this journey home with. So hey, I really like Henry's comment. He says, the last balancing I felt run through my liver meridian like a river. Awesome. I do feel like, the liver came up in like several different ways in that whole balancing. But the idea of, if we can keep everything flowing and we don't get stuck, we can stay focused on what we want to do and not need the distraction and not need the craving and so on. So cool. All right. Well, it's 11 o'clock. I've finished basically on time here. I'll stay on if anybody else has a a question, another comment, I'll stay on, but for another minute or two. But I think this was a good call, and thank you all for joining me. Um, the the second call, or the third call in this series will be in 2 weeks on the 17th. And I'm going to try to send um, everybody who's been on the journey home another questionnaire about what you'd like to see in the new year. I have the idea of having a bit of a mix of things. I like the idea of having some things that are ongoing things that are maybe like a monthly support call, but I also would like to address other topics and so on. So if you think of something that you'd like me to address, send me an email, but I'll also try to do a little bit of a survey like I did sometime early last year. And so that we can have some direction for 2018. I'm actually, I think astrologically, there's a lot of things going on that are really shifting and building, and I'm feeling like 2018 is actually going to be a very auspicious year for me and for Aconnect, and I hope for the world, right? So, and I really want to tune into how to tune into that with this series. So any thoughts, I'm really open, and I will post the replay hopefully before I go to bed tonight, but certainly first thing in the morning if I don't get it done tonight. So, all right. Hey, thank you all so much for everything. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. And